We have to finish the process we began under my administration of fundamentally reevaluating NATO's purpose and NATO's mission. Our foreign policy establishment keeps trying to pull the world into conflict with a nuclear-armed Russia based on the lie that Russia represents our greatest threat. But the greatest threat to Western civilization today is not Russia. It's probably, more than anything else, ourselves and some of the horrible USA-hating people that represent us.
I want to talk about the real threats to America, because it's damn sure not me with my little video that 20 people saw.
So a question of honesty. You gave the tapes of January 6th to Tucker Carlson. Do you have any regrets about that? What have we learned from these tapes that have been on Tucker Carlson tonight?
But I'll tell you what is a threat to America.
The first thing I found is that the January 6th committee was not honest with us. What really raises the point with me is, why did I watch federal courts? Why did I watch cities burn, federal agencies or something, and nobody arrested there?
Kevin McCarthy, the weakest speaker in the history of America, is a threat to America.
Yeah, I mean, at one point we're watching them walk and being escorted by police within the Capitol, which was quite stunning.
Here you have these people, these hair hats on television, scolding the American Speaker of the House because he won't suck up to a corrupt foreign leader who's demanding that you send your children to a war in a country you can't find on a map. Zelensky's on television almost every day demanding that you send your children to war, really, where they could die.
Tucker Carlson, who apparently works for Putin now, is a threat to America.
Siding with Putin? Who's siding with Putin? I haven't seen anybody do that.
The West started the war, and we used force in order to stop it.
If there is any single American who deserves scorn and, yes, blame for the invasion of Ukraine, it would be Joe Biden.
The Ukrainian people have become hostages of their Western masters.
Ukraine is not a democracy. It's a client state of the Biden administration.
The U.S. were training on the future theater of military actions by owning biological laboratories in Ukraine.
Military biological programs are under development in Ukraine, financed by the U.S. Defense Ministry.
Western countries were setting military bases on our border.
The Russians don't want American missiles on their border. They don't want a hostile government next door.
NATO took specific actions, expansions to our borders.
Getting Ukraine to join NATO was the key to inciting war with Russia.
The elites of the West are not hiding their goals. They are trying to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia.
The Biden administration wanted all along a regime change war against Russia.
The initiators of the sanctions are punishing themselves.
So it's not Vladimir Putin who's getting punished, it's American citizens. It's you.
The West provoked the growth of prices in their own countries, collapse of energy sector.
Gas prices are already the highest they have ever been in history. So the price of natural gas and the price of electricity and food and everything else you buy. I think we should probably take the side of Russia if we have to choose between Russia and Ukraine. That is my view. We're on Putin's side.
DeSantis banning books in Florida is a threat to America.
Chances are you learned the story of civil rights icon Rosa Parks back in elementary school. She became the mother of the civil rights movement after she refused to give up her seat to a white man on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama back in 1955. Parks' action inspired the Montgomery bus boycott, which led to the Supreme Court ruling that bus segregation was unconstitutional. It is a fairly well-known story. But 68 years later, Rosa Parks' story is being, shall we say, rewritten. The New York Times reports today that in an effort to get a social studies textbook approved for use in the state of Florida, at least one publisher has made significant changes to Rosa Parks' story.
DeSantis rewriting the history of Black Americans is a threat to America.
The New York Times compared three versions of the company's Rosa Parks story meant for first graders: a current lesson used now in Florida, an initial version created for the state textbook review, and a second updated version. In the current lesson on Rosa Parks, racial segregation is clearly explained. Quote, the law said African Americans had to give up their seats on the bus if a white person wanted to sit down. In a second version created for the Florida textbook review, race is mentioned indirectly. Quote, she was told to move to a different seat because of the color of her skin. And the reference to white people is gone. And in the third, updated version, race isn't mentioned at all. Quote, she was told to move to a different seat. She did not.
The last thing we would want is for anybody to know why she was kicked off that bus.
Who knows why Rosa Parks was told to move? Could have been anything.
A teacher in Florida would be allowed to talk about Marvin Gaye, but wouldn't be allowed to talk about his song, What's Going On? What's going on with that? It's a threat to America.
The Stop Woke Act basically bans the teaching of any lesson, especially ones about race and racism, that make any student feel discomfort, which could be anything that suggests systemic racism exists or existed, because who knows how that would make students feel, especially white students.
A teacher might be allowed to talk about Jackie Robinson being the first African American in baseball. But she couldn't talk about why he was the first African American in baseball. Why is that not a threat to America?
The Florida Citizens Alliance, this is from the New York Times reporting today, a conservative group has urged the state to reject 28 of the 38 textbooks that its volunteers reviewed, including more than a dozen by McGraw-Hill, a major national publisher.
It's certainly a threat to Black America. I wonder if Black Twitter would have anything to say about that. Come on, Black Twitter. I'm counting on you. Like and subscribe.
These are the kind of objections this group has. An 8th grade book gave outsized attention to the negative side of the treatment of Native Americans, while failing to give a fuller account of their own acts of violence, such as the Jamestown Massacre of 1622, in which Powhatan warriors killed more than 300 English colonists. I mean, who knows what they'll say about slave insurrections and whether we've given too much, we've put too much onus on slaveholders. I mean, the asymmetry here is quite obvious when we're talking about the genocide of the native peoples in this country.
That was Ron DeSantis saying that we shouldn't be involved in a territory dispute in Ukraine. How is that not a threat to America?
DeSantis now says backing Ukraine is not a vital U.S. interest. Look at this. While the United States has many vital national interests, becoming further entangled in a territorial dispute between Ukraine and Russia is not one of them. His answer, part of a questionnaire the Fox host Tucker Carlson sent to Republican presidential hopefuls.
Does he work for Putin too?
Ron DeSantis now says it is not a vital U.S. interest, and he calls it a territorial dispute. Ron DeSantis, as a member of the House in the Obama administration, we in the Congress have been urging the president I've been to provide arms to Ukraine. They want to fight their good fight. They're not asking us to fight it for them, and the president has steadfastly refused, and I think that's a mistake. So a flip-flop. What?
The Tucker tail is wagging the dog. That's why.
Or does the entire party work for Putin now?
I mean, look at the forum through which he wanted to give this information. From a host on Fox News who has been railing against the U.S. involvement in Ukraine, has been supporting autocrats who are in and around the region. And this is a person who has a large audience within the Republican electorate. And so that's why you see a flip-flop there.
Because it seems like that's what Republicans do. They hate America and they love the Soviet Union.
That, I mean, by the way, can we just talk about the fact that it is Tucker Carlson who is sending questionnaires to these candidates? That says everything.
They blame America first, and then they doped on Vladimir Putin.
And so let's go through some of the different answers which tell you we are no longer living in Ronald Reagan's Republican Party. There are still people like Nikki Haley who voice that view, but it's increasingly, I would say, a minority. Or, Donald Trump. No, the question is opposing Russia and Ukraine a vital American national strategic interest? Donald Trump says no, but it is for Europe, but not for the United States. Mike Pence disagrees. When the United States supports Ukraine in their fight against Putin, we follow the Reagan doctrine. DeSantis, again, he's with Trump, more or less, becoming further entangled in a territorial dispute between Ukraine and Russia is not one of them. Nikki Haley, as you know, says, yes, the Russian government is a powerful dictatorship that makes no secret of its hatred of America, and fellow South Carolinian Tim Scott, degrading the Russian military is in our vital national interest. Even the way the question is framed, in the idea that this isn't, Ron DeSantis wants to make it about Russia and Ukraine, Putin and Zelensky.
Meanwhile, undercutting NATO, which both Trump and DeSantis did this week. Hell, Trump thinks we should disband it. I guess we always knew that's what he thought. Apparently Ron DeSantis does too.
As opposed to an attack on a huge democracy in Europe, access to Ukrainian, the breadbasket, if you will, of Europe, all the economic and agricultural power that would give him. And then what about Moldova? What about the NATO countries, the Eastern European countries that joined NATO?
Well, I think the answer from a lot of the Republican presidential candidates, Republican primary voters would be, so what about Moldova, right? That this is a party that just doesn't really care about that stuff in the same way.
And if he doesn't, maybe he should say so. What are the odds?
You have Trump and DeSantis essentially on the same page when it comes to Ukraine. Marco Rubio, who's not running this time, said on UU today there is a national security issue in Ukraine. And he said DeSantis, quote, doesn't deal with foreign policy every day as governor. So little poke there. We're just getting started in the Republican race.
How are these people not a threat to America? I mean, hell, Ron DeSantis just appointed a guy to some land board that's going to oversee Disney that actually thinks that water turns you gay.
Former pastor and middle school health teacher pronouncing every syllable in menstruation, Ron Perry.
Now, he might not be a threat to America, but he's damn sure a threat to water and gay people.
Perry is getting some attention for this comment he made in 2022.
Why are there homosexuals today? There are any number of reasons. You know, there's estrogen in the water from birth control pills. They can't get it out.
What the hell's wrong with these people? How is that not a threat to America?
Obviously that is not a thing. But if you are concerned, The Late Show has a new sponsor just for you.
Are you worried about tap water turning you gay? Then try man water. Man water!
Because anybody who thinks that water turns you gay and now works in government, that's a threat to America. Anybody who's on the side of Vladimir Putin is a threat to America. And anybody out there who thinks that I am a threat to America, thanks for the week off. I needed it, man. Got some work done, and spent some time with my family. It's been nice. Y'all take it easy. I'm Zachariah, Lone Star Liberal.
The first bottled water that's filtered through beef jerky and then exposed to straight porn. This water has never cried or watched Thelma and Louise. Man water! It was also raised by a cold, distant father that never said, I love you. Man water. What are you waiting for, man?